Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today, if you don't mind, I would like to continue on with our journey, yours and mine, through the recent releases made by the Criterion Collection during this year of 2020. Today, I'd like to focus in on a film that is included in the amazing set that was released by Criterion earlier this year, the set being Martin Scorsese's World Cinema Project number 3. This is an unbelievable set, and I strongly recommend it. This is turning out to be one of my favorite releases of the year. There are many films included in such set, but today I want to focus in on one very special film. This is from 1934 from Mexico, and the filmmaker is Juan Bustillo Oro, in a very fascinating work of art. This is assigned spine number 1048, by the way, and what a film this is. The name of the film is Dos Monjes. This is the film from 1934. This is from the great artist Juan Bustillo Oro, and it is an extraordinary achievement in the cinema of Mexico for a number of reasons, and I'll try to touch upon those throughout the course of this video. The film is Dos Monjes, which can be translated into English as Two Monks. Two Monks. This title therefore captures the essence of what the story is about, which is about two monks that are in this particular monastery. And we discover quite early on that there is this feeling of antagonism, which is from the outset unexplained, but it is there and it is apparent. An antagonism between these two monks, these two men. And throughout the course of the film, we then, as viewers, discover through a very extraordinary and intricate flashback structure, we discover the perspectives of each of these men vis-a-vis certain events that happened between them in the past. So this is in essence the story structure of Dos Monjes, the Juan Bustillo Oro film. This film is amazing. This is an absolutely enthralling, captivating, and in many ways, I dare say, groundbreaking work. One of the reasons why this is so, I think, is because, well, first of all, it has a striking visual style. It is often compared to, say, the great films of German Expressionism. And that's the case because we have very exaggerated decor and settings and environments that seem to be relying on the abstraction of shapes and the use of space in a elongated and quite experimental tone sort of way. This is also true in terms of the way the camera captures such space and how it tries to figure in the characters within such abstract space. This is very important too, because you'll notice when you watch the film as well that combined with the settings and the environment, the camera work too is quite bold, and maybe it can be described as well as being very experimental. The way that the camera tilts its angles, also the way that the camera captures human beings in the frame, not always in the center, but sometimes at the very edges of the frames in a very suggestive way. And so this is all to say that this is very much helping to make comparisons with German Expressionism in cinema. This comparison, I think, is also very apt because if we think of, and I'm being very basic here in my explanation, if we think of those sorts of movements in cinema, we understand that in conjunction with the visual, there is also a deep-rooted connection with human psychology. And one way to interpret these scenes and this mode of expression would be, in a sense, the expression of the inner workings of human psychology made bare in the outer environment. And so therein lies a connection between the external and the internal. And I think when we think about the human psychology and the struggle and the notions of tempestuous jealousy and also the heightened emotions of men who are in certain states of passion, as well as other states of heightened emotional intensity, then I think we can realize that this link between the extremes of the external, I think, is very much relevant with that which is going on internally with the characters. So I think it is an incredibly evocative and appropriate way to express certain modes of cinema. So the decor and the expressions here, visual style, and the camera techniques are indeed truly amazing. That's not all, though, because this film is packed to the brim with extraordinary elements, one of which being the structure itself, the narrative structure. This is a film that relies on a very intricate flashback structure. And when we talk about flashback structures in this film, to be specific, we speak about the flashback from the viewpoint and perspective of each of these two men. What we have, in essence, is a flashback told from one of the men's perspectives, and then we have a flashback told from the other man's perspective, the two monks in question. And what we have is a flashback that is dealing with relevant incidents in the past and what happened between these two men and what happened in terms of their relationships between each other and also with a young woman that is part of this past between them. We see each of their viewpoints in the flashback structure, and the way in which these flashback stories either are consistent with each other or are not consistent with each other forms an incredibly complex psychological portrait as to the nature of perception, as to whether or not one or more of these men is or are lying, which story to believe as viewers, and the like. And so this forms a very complex psychological portrait that is also dealing with time, that is also dealing with truth and lies, who to believe, and that's also dealing, as I say, with human psychology. Many scholars and critics, including those that are mentioned or that are referred to or that are featured on the supplements of this great release, make a very appropriate comparison to the later film by Akira Kurosawa called Rashomon. And that film, Rashomon, has a very famous structure too involving flashbacks. But please note here that we are dealing with a film of a similar nature, but some years prior to Rashomon. And so that, I think, alone is a really fascinating aspect of this film. The other, or many other remarkable things about this film are its tone. I mentioned earlier about its sense of expression, of certain modes of experimental absurdity and comparisons to German Expressionism, which I think are very appropriate. That is linked to a feeling or atmosphere of dread. The term Gothic horror is often used to describe this film, and I think that is a very appropriate phrase as well. This can also be seen in many ways to be a kind of horror film, and a lot of the scholarship, as I say, included in the supplements of this disc, do suggest that this is also an early example in Mexican cinema of this kind of Gothic horror tradition. And so it really has a lot of potent, powerful modes of expression in this realm of genre. A very effective work of art indeed. And related to that, we also have, I think, the wonderfully inventive and innovative and bold and daring film techniques, cinema techniques. Juan Bustillo Oro, in his production of this film, is, he's regarded as being one of the great artists. And we get, as I say, from the supplements and elsewhere, we really get an understanding as to why, using this film as an example, because he really does a lot of bold camera techniques. There are some breathtaking things that happen in terms of long takes, in terms of perspective, in terms of shadow and forced perspective, in terms of sound and silence. This is a sound film, but this film also employs elements of silent film as well, and the theater, which are used to great effect, and they further enhance the melodramatic elements of the story, because this is also dealing with great aspects of melodrama and love triangles and jealousy and emotion. So the techniques cinematically that are employed by Juan Bustillo Oro and crew really serve to heighten the emotional tension and to create a work of art that is artistically grand and ambitious. And it also pays so much respect to the characters that are being portrayed here. This is an artistically masterful example of cinema, and to think of the cinematic tricks and techniques that are being employed as we watch this film, and to think also how well it serves the story, is truly breathtaking. So therein lies yet another reason, I believe, that this film is truly a magnificent work of art. This is, again, one that you have to watch. This is so great, and it makes one think. I think its answers are not, let's say, readily accessible. In other words, there is still a sense of ambiguity. There is still a sense of mystery. What is going on? What is going on? What am I watching in terms of perspectives? From whose perspective am I watching this? Is there a subjective thing going on here in terms of fantasy and horror elements? And also the way in which drama is heightened to great emotional levels, which is very much reminiscent of, let's say, the great works of opera. It's all in here, my friends, and it is also a brilliantly constructed work of art and entertainment of an immaculate level. So this is the great film Dos Monjes from 1934. Again, spine number 1048 on this great release from the Criterion Collection. Speaking of the Criterion Collection's release, so we have here another restoration, and it looks great, it sounds great, and we can tell immediately that a lot of care and precision and thought went into this restoration. And so you can read more about that in the details about the transfer, and also some of the introductory details that are found with the film itself. You can also hear it in the Martin Scorsese introduction. And speaking of which, the supplements include a 2 to 3 minute brief introduction from the great Martin Scorsese. And here he speaks in, I think, really wonderful introductory terms about the filmmaker, Juan Bustillo Oro, and about this film, Dos Monjes from 1934, and its significance in terms of Mexican cinema, and also its horror Gothic tones, and also the flashback structure that preceded the great work Rashomon, and other points. This is a great introduction, and he also speaks too about the care and work that went into the restoration process. So a wonderful introduction. Again, this is, I think, really appropriate to watch prior to watching the film. It won't give anything away, and so if you are so inclined, please watch the Martin Scorsese introduction. But that's not all, because we have a great one-on-one interview with film scholar and expert Charles Ramirez Berg, and this is approximately 19 minutes. And here he goes through very intelligently and methodically and in such a well-spoken manner the history of Mexican cinema, the start, if you will, of Mexican cinema, the roots that took hold, that allowed for the industry to grow up through the 1930s and the advent of sound and sound cinema. And from here we have the entrance, if you will, of Juan Bustillo Oro in the cinema industry, leading up to the directorial effort that is Dos Monjes. And from there, we have the great scholarship here discussing the ideas of expressionism vis-a-vis this film, the notion of how the love story, the love triangle, is being expressed, the importance of the flashback structure, and also the horror elements, and also the importance and significance of the camera work. I mentioned the camera work here, but we have to remember the work of Agustin Jimenez, which is very significant, and Jimenez is a very important name in the cinema of Mexico as well. So it's wonderful to get a great perspective on the work of Agustin Jimenez and Juan Bustillo Oro. And what's even more striking too is we also get a sense of how this film it fits into this history of Mexican cinema. Because what is so striking about this film, and I think Berg makes this point very well, is that this is, I think, a very striking film, or my understanding is that it is very striking in the context of early Mexican cinema for many reasons, one of which is the fact that it is a very stylized, experimental type of almost a film that almost borrows from the surreal, and this is all to say that this is not a sort of rugged neo-realism type of film based in realism, but this is a very heightened drama that is heavily stylized. And this is, I think, very important when we think about what will transpire and what will be the progress of Mexican cinema as we get in through the 1930s and 40s and onwards. And the idea also how this was one avenue that this cinema could have traveled, but due to certain financial successes or lack thereof in subsequent films of this nature, and also due to the financial successes and critical successes of other films that had a more realistic quality, then Mexican cinema was shaped in terms of its history throughout the early 20th century and beyond. But that makes this film, Dos Monjes, even more powerful and more intriguing, I think, as an example of this kind of stylized work coming from this period of time. So this interview that is found as the second supplement is so enlightening and so eye-opening. And for someone like me who is very much a novice when it comes to the study of early Mexican cinema, I think a supplement like this is truly rewarding and a must watch. So that's the second supplement. Then we have the booklet, and I've talked about this many times. It is a remarkable booklet. It has many essays, and it also has information on Dos Monjes itself. So on page 5 of the booklet, we have the cast and crew breakdown. And then we have the essay, which is focusing in on the film itself, which starts, on page 44 of the booklet. And this is by Elisa Lozano. This is called Expressionism a la Mexicana. This is another brilliant, brilliant essay. And it is brilliant for a number of reasons. It does go into more detail about the filmmaker, Juan Bustillo Oro, and and in parallel to that, or through that, a discussion of the Mexican cinema landscape during these years of the 1920s leading up to the 1930s. And then from there we have a brilliant and great discussion of the film itself and the themes of the film, and also how certain issues of framing and pacing really serve the narrative quite well. And I think the arguments that are made by this essay are really well stated. And we have also, in parallel to that, how this film translated within the context of the Mexican film industry going forward, and also references made to its success and how people reacted to it at the time, and what it led to subsequently. And there is some really nice discussion toward the end of the essay about how this film and its experimental nature led to further attempts by Juan Bustillo Oro to make films of a similar nature. However, perhaps due to the relative lack of financial success in those ventures, combined with the success found from other filmmakers of a more realistic type of cinema, that led to a path that was generally guided by the focus on a sort of realism in cinema, which therefore, as I mentioned earlier, makes this film very wonderfully peculiar, and thus an important film in terms of the context of the whole sweep of the history of the early years of Mexican cinema. So it's a brilliant essay, and so I strongly recommend it if you can read it. Once again, the essay is called Expressionism a la Mexicana. Great stuff, and it's just another great example of how great this book is and how great the set is overall. So there is this great set and this great film. And so to end, my friends, let me say once again, and urge you once again, please watch this film. Watch this film. Dos Monjes is fantastic. It's atmospheric, it is clever, it has moments of real artistic triumphant beauty. There are some moments too of not quite knowing what is going on, and that's one of the great things about it. It has a lovely way in which it preserves an ambiguity and vagueness that I think serve its artistic survivability into the ages. And I think the interview that one of the supplements, Charles Ramirez-Berg, I think goes into this really well, which is that there is still a sense of what we are meant to believe. Who do we believe? And I think the film does lend itself so beautifully to many interpretations, and I think that is the work of a great genius, and that makes the film timeless, and thus one can watch it over and over and over again, and hopefully come to different conclusions each time. And that is a mark of a great work of cinematic art, and that's what this is, in my own humble opinion, and I dare say the opinions of many others, for good reason, because this is a breathtaking work of art. This is from 1934, Juan Bustillo Oro's film Dos Monjes, translated as Two Monks. Okay, my friends, so that's it for now. And so until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well, and please keep on watching a lot of great, great movies. Thank you so much, as always, for your time. I really appreciate it. Stay strong, stay well, and cheers.